You have to understand something fundamental before we even talk about attraction. No one can value you more than you value yourself. It doesn't work that way. If you walk into any interaction with a woman believing she's the prize and you're just lucky to be there, you've already handed her all the power. And that's not how you make her chase you. Self-respect is not just a nice-sounding phrase. It's an energy, a presence, a way of moving through the world that communicates without a single word that you know exactly who you are and what you're worth. It's in the way you hold your posture, the way you speak, no, without apology when something doesn't align with your principles. Most men lose the chase before it even begins because they're trying to win approval instead of commanding respect. They overextend, overgive, and overexplain. They think that the more they do for her, the more she'll value them. But in reality, human psychology works the opposite way. We value what we have to earn. When you give yourself away too easily, your time, your energy, your emotional attention, you lower the perceived value of all those things. Now, let's look at this from a psychological perspective. The principle of self-perception theory tells us that people judge their feelings based on their actions. If you act like you're not worth much by chasing, begging, or tolerating poor treatment, you start to feel that way internally. And here's the catch: she sees it too. You can't hide a lack of self-respect. It leaks out in your tone, your body language, even in the way you respond to her text messages. Women are instinctively drawn to men who don't need them, not because they want to be unwanted, but because a man who doesn't need them is communicating strength, capability, and choice. He's saying, I am complete as I am. You can add to my life, but you will never define it. That kind of independence triggers both curiosity and respect. And here's the thing most men misspect. Self-respect isn't about being arrogant or dismissive. It's about boundaries. If you're willing to walk away from any situation that violates your standards, you immediately separate yourself from the majority of men who will tolerate anything just to keep a woman's attention. I want you to think about this in terms of scarcity and abundance. In economics, when something is scarce, its value increases. The same applies to your attention and your energy. If you hand them out indiscriminately, they become common, and common things aren't chased. But if you are selective, if you treat your time like a luxury item, people will naturally place more value on it. She will place more value on it. Self-respect also demands self-investment. If you want to carry yourself as a man of worth, you have to back it up by constantly improving yourself. Your mind, your health, your skills. You can't fake high value for long. Sooner or later, the truth shows. And the truth is, when you truly respect yourself, you won't settle for being stagnant. You'll have goals, you'll have a mission, and you pursue them with or without her. That's attractive in a way no clever line or game could ever be. Now, some of you might be thinking, but if I play it too cool, won't she think I'm not interested? There's a difference between withholding interest and holding self-respect. You can absolutely show that you're interested while still making it clear that your life does not revolve around her. You're communicating, I like you, but I like me too, and I will never betray myself to keep you. The truth is, the man who respects himself will always have the upper hand, not because he's trying to manipulate anyone, but because he's immune to manipulation. When you're not desperate for someone's attention, you're free to see them clearly. You can decide if they're worth your time without the fog of need clouding your judgment. And that's why self-respect is the foundation of making her chase you, because when you value yourself, you don't chase, you attract. You become the one she needs to work to impress. You stop worrying about whether you're enough for her and start asking if she's enough for you. That shift changes everything. So here's what I want you to walk away with. Stop treating your attention like a discount sale. Start treating it like a limited edition masterpiece. Stand firm in your values, protect your energy, and remember, the man who can walk away at any moment is the man she will run to keep up with. If self-respect is the foundation, then purpose is the structure you build on top of it. It's the thing that gives your presence weight, the thing that makes a woman look at you and think, he's going somewhere, and I want to be part of that journey. Here's the reality: most men never grasp a man without purpose becomes a man without direction. And a man without direction becomes a man who drifts. Drifting men chase women because they have nothing else to chase. But a man with a purpose, he's chasing a vision, a mission, a goal that's bigger than himself. And when you're chasing something meaningful, you're not out here begging for validation. You're building something worth being validated for. From a psychological standpoint, purpose functions as an anchor for identity. When you have a clearly defined mission, you move through life with more certainty. Your choices align, your habits align. Your energy isn't scattered. This sense of internal alignment is rare, and rare things are attractive. Purpose-centered men radiate a kind of quiet authority because they're not living in reaction to the world. They're moving towards something they've chosen. Women sense this immediately. It's not just about what you do for work or what hobby you're obsessed with. It's about the way you carry yourself when you know you're on your path. It's the calm confidence of someone who doesn't need to be entertained, distracted, or rescued from boredom, because he's already engaged in a mission that excites him. That energy is magnetic. It says, I'm not here to fill a void in my life with you. I'm here to share my life with you if you're worthy of it. Now, this is where a lot of men misunderstand the idea of purpose. They think it means they have to be millionaires, CEOs, or globe-trotting adventures before they can be attractive. That's not the case. Your purpose can be anything. Building a business, mastering a skill, creating art, serving your community, or even becoming the best version of yourself physically and mentally. What matters is that it's yours, it's meaningful to you, and it demands your growth. Here's why this matters in the chase dynamic. When you have purpose, you naturally become less available. You don't have to pretend to be busy, you are busy. Your schedule reflects your priorities, and because she's not your top priority, she's intrigued. She has to find her place in your life instead of assuming she's the center of it. That shift changes how she engages with you. She starts to pursue your time instead of you constantly pursuing hers. From a philosophical angle, purpose also gives you resilience. If your self-worth is tied to a woman's approval, you'll break the moment she pulls away. But if your self-worth is tied to your mission, her presence enhances your life. It doesn't define it. That's the difference between needing a woman and choosing a woman. One comes from weakness, the other from strength. Think about the most compelling men in history. Leaders, innovators, artists. They didn't captivate people just because of looks or charm. They drew people in because they stood for something. They had a vision, and they were moving toward it with unwavering commitment. People followed that energy. Women followed that energy. And here's the truth. It wasn't because those men were chasing women. It was because those men were too busy chasing something bigger. When you live with purpose, your life becomes a story that others want to be part of. She doesn't just see you as a man. She sees you as an adventure, as a challenge, as an opportunity to connect with something meaningful. And that's when the chase becomes inevitable. So ask yourself right now, if a woman stepped into your life tomorrow, what would she be stepping into? Would she be joining a man who's drifting and looking for her to give him direction? Or would she be stepping into the orbit of a man already moving at full speed towards something he's determined to achieve? Because here's the truth you can't escaping: when you have a purpose, you stop competing for attention and you start commanding it. You don't need to convince anyone to chase you. They'll see where you're going and decide for themselves that they want to keep up. And that's why purpose isn't optional. It's the difference between being a man she notices for a moment and a man she remembers for a lifetime. So find it, commit to it, and let everything else in your life, including her, rise to meet it. Once you've built that foundation of self-respect and anchored yourself in purpose, the next step is learning to control the pace of interaction. And let me tell you, this is where most men sabotage themselves, often without even realizing it. The moment they sense a woman is interested, they sprint. They flutter with attention, over-communicate, and try to fast-track intimacy, emotional or physical, thinking it will lock her in. But attraction doesn't work like that. In fact, one of the fastest ways to kill attraction is to rush it. The psychology here is simple. Scarcity creates value and pacing creates anticipation. When you slow things down, you give her space to wonder about you, to miss you, to invest in the connection. This isn't about playing games, it's about understanding human nature. We appreciate more when we have to wait for it. We value more when it unfolds over time. Think about it, when you binge an entire show in one night, it's over and forgotten by the end of the week. But when you watch one episode a week, you spend days thinking about it, predicting what happens next, and looking forward to the next release. You're emotionally invested. Attraction works the same way. By controlling the pace, you also protect yourself. You give yourself the time to see her clearly, beyond the initial chemistry, beyond the excitement. You avoid being swept up in infatuation and making decisions that you regret later. Pacing is not just a tool for building attraction, it's a filter for identifying genuine compatibility. Now, here's where the philosophical depth comes in. When you control the pace, you're making a statement about your life. You're saying, I move at my speed, not at the speed of your emotions or expectations. That's powerful because it shows you're not driven by impulse, you're driven by intention. And make no mistake, she will notice this. In a world where most men are quick to overexpose themselves, a man who doesn't rush stands out. She'll question why you're not pushing things forward faster. She'll wonder if you have other priorities, other options. That curiosity is the seed of the chase. Here's something else pacing does. It creates contrast. When you give her space and then give her attention, the attention feels more intense, more meaningful. If you're constantly available, your presence becomes background noise, but when it's occasional, it's an event. That event creates an emotional spike, and those spikes are what make moments memorable. This is not about withholding interest or affection to manipulate. It's about aligning your actions with your values and your pace with your priorities. If you have self-respect and a purpose, it makes no sense to drop everything to be instantly available. You respond on your time because your life is full. And because of that, your time carries weight. Of course, controlling the pace also means being willing to pull back if she starts to take your presence for granted. When you sense that shift, you don't argue or demand more effort. You simply create distance. That distance forces her to decide whether she's willing to close the gap. If she is, she'll chase. If she's not, you've just saved yourself from investing in someone who doesn't value you. There's also an emotional maturity to pacing. It shows you can sit with tension instead of trying to relieve it instantly. that you can enjoy the process instead of rushing to the outcome. It's the difference between a man who's desperate for closure and a man who trusts the flow of connection to unfold naturally. When you live this way, something shifts in how women approach you. Instead of you working to prove you're worth their time, they start working to prove they're worth yours. That's the quiet reversal of power that happens when you understand and control the rhythm of attraction. So here's the takeaway: don't sprint when you should be walking. Don't give the entire story in the first chapter. Control the pace, not to manipulate, but to respect the value of what's being built. Begin to mave, because the man who can slow things down is the man shall speed up to catch. Once you've learned to control the pace of interaction, the next step is understanding the art of cultivating emotional mystery. And I need you to hear me clearly. This is not about being fake or creating drama. It's about allowing enough space in your connection for curiosity to thrive. Most men destroy mystery before it even has a chance to work for them. The moment they feel a spark, they empty their entire life story on the table. Every thought, every feeling, every personal detail. It all comes pouring out in the first few days. And while that may feel like vulnerability, what it really does is rob the other person of the most powerful human motivator, the unknown. Attraction core is fueled by curiosity, and curiosity needs gaps. If she already knows exactly what you think, what you'll say, how you'll react in every situation, she has nothing left to discover. And without discovery, there's no pursuit. The truth is, people value the process of uncovering someone layer by layer. When you give it all away up front, you deprive her of that process. From a psychological perspective, this ties directly into what's known as the Zeigarnik effect. It's the principle that people remember and are more engaged by incomplete tasks than completed ones. If a conversation, an interaction, or even an emotional exchange feels like it has more to uncover, her mind will keep circling back to it. But if you give her the entire conclusion immediately, the mental loop closes. And with it, the drive to keep chasing. Emotional mystery isn't about avoiding connection. It's about pacing it so the connection deepens naturally over time. You let her see enough to be intrigued, but not so much that she feels she's figured you out. It's in the way you share pieces of your story without explaining every detail. It's in the way you show interest without laying your entire emotional world at her feet right away. Philosophically, it's rooted in self-control. A man who has no filter on what he shares is often a man who needs constant reassurance. But a man who can hold some of his inner world back is signaling that he doesn't need constant validation, that he's comfortable being partially unknown. That confidence in remaining a mystery is magnetic. Here's the thing, you can't force mystery. It has to come from genuinely having a rich, full life beyond her. If the only interesting thing about you is your attraction to her, there's no mystery to maintain. But if you have passions, pursuits, relationships, and ambitions that she only gets glimpses of, she'll feel drawn to uncover more. It's also about emotional variety. If every interaction feels predictable, attraction fades. But if sometimes you're deeply engaged, and other times you're focused on your own world, she starts to experience contrast. And contrast is powerful. It makes the highs feel higher because they're not constant. A lot of men are afraid that holding back will make them seem distant or uninterested. But here's the paradox: by not giving everything away, you actually create more space for her to lean in. People lean toward what feels slightly out of reach. That's why mystery and chase are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. This doesn't mean you play cold or refuse to open up. The key is to let your openness be earned. Just like you wouldn't hand over the keys to your house to someone you just met, you don't hand over the keys to your deepest emotions right away. She has to show, through effort and consistency, that she's worthy of those deeper layers. And here's the deeper truth: mystery protects your self-respect. When you reveal everything too soon, you risk building a connection based on premature intimacy rather than real compatibility. But when you reveal yourself gradually, you're giving both of you the chance to see if the connection is worth investing in. When you combine controlled pacing with emotional mystery, you create a dynamic that keeps her mind engaged long after you've left the room. She'll think about what you said and what you didn't say. She'll replay moments in her head trying to understand you, and every unanswered question becomes another reason to see you again. So remember this: you are not obligated to be fully known on the first meeting, the first date, or even the first month. Let her earn the right to know you deeply. Keep a part of your world that is yours alone until she's proven she deserves to step into it. Because the man who remains just beyond full understanding is the man she'll keep chasing to discover. Once you've mastered self-respect, anchored yourself in purpose, controlled the pace, and cultivated emotional mystery, there's another layer that cements the chase, and that's demonstrating high standards. Because intrigue without standards is just curiosity. But intrigue with standards, that's desire mixed with respect. High standards are not about arrogance, control, or setting up impossible expectations to test someone. They're about clearly defining what you will and will not accept in your life, and living by those boundaries consistently. They're not rules you announce to the world, they're values you embody without compromise. Most men fail here because they're so afraid of losing a woman's interest that they bend, adjust, and make exceptions for behaviors they know aren't acceptable. They overlook disrespect, excuse flakiness, or tolerate inconsistency. And each time they do, they send a silent message: my time, my energy, and my dignity are negotiable. Once you've sent that message, you can't be surprised when someone stops valuing you. From a psychological perspective, we teach people how to treat us by what we allow. If you respond positively to poor behavior, you reinforce it. If you let someone break plans repeatedly without consequence, you're communicating that your presence is not worth protecting. High standards stop that cycle before it even begins. But here's the key. Standards aren't just about what you demand from others, they're about what you demand from yourself. If you expect respect, you must also give respect. If you want honesty, you must speak truth. If you want loyalty, you must live in a way that inspires trust. Standards aren't a weapon, they're a mirror. Philosophically, high standards are rooted in self-worth. A man who values himself doesn't need to justify his boundaries. He understands that if someone walks away because they can't meet those standards, it's not a loss. It's alignment. It's the natural process of filtering out the wrong fit. And here's the paradox: when you're willing to lose someone who doesn't measure up, you become infinitely more attractive to someone who does. When it comes to women, high standards are magnetic because they flip the dynamic. You're no longer trying to prove you're good enough for her. You're observing whether she's good enough for you. This shift is subtle but powerful. It forces her to invest, to demonstrate value, to work to maintain her place in your life. And that's the essence of making her chase you. You've created a situation where she's motivated to earn your approval. Here's what demonstrating high standards looks like in practice. It's going to make life. You don't tolerate disrespect, no matter how attractive the person is. You don't rearrange your life at the last minute for someone who doesn't value your time. You don't ignore inconsistencies in behavior because you're afraid of confrontation. You're willing to walk away from any situation, no matter how good it looks on the surface, if it violates your values. Make life. And here's the important part. Your standards must be consistent. The moment you make an exception for someone because you're attracted to them, you reveal that your standards are not principles, they're preferences. Preferences can be negotiated. Principles cannot. It's also worth noting that standards don't have to be harsh. They're not about unkind or inflexible. In fact, the most attractive high standards are delivered with calm confidence, not hostility. You can say, "That doesn't work for me," without anger. You can walk away without resentment. That's when your standards become part of your presence, not a reaction to someone else's behavior. When you live this way, you'll notice something interesting. People will either rise to meet your standards or fall away, and you have to be okay with either outcome, because the truth is, lowering your standards to keep someone is just another form of self-betrayal. And self-betrayal is the fastest way to lose both respect and attraction. High standards aren't just about protecting yourself from bad relationships. They're about attracting the right ones. The kind where effort is mutual, respect is automatic, and the connection is built on shared values rather than one-sided compromise. So remember this: the woman who is truly right for you will never be intimidated by your standards. She'll be inspired by them. She'll see that you're a man who knows what he wants, who won't settle, and who lives by his word. That kind of man is rare, and rare things are worth chasing. The bottom line: never lower your standards to keep someone. Keep your standards high, your boundaries firm, and your values intact. Because the man who refuses to compromise himself for anyone is the man she will fight to keep. We've talked about self-respect, living with purpose, controlling the pace, cultivating mystery, and holding high standards. But none of that matters if you give your time, energy, and affection to anyone who shows the slightest bit of interest. Interest is cheap. Investment is priceless. Here's the problem most men having: they respond to attention as if it's commitment. A smile, a flirtatious comment, a few texts, and suddenly they're giving her everything. But interest requires no effort. Anyone can be interested in you for a moment. It takes no sacrifice, no consistency, no depth. It's just a passing spark. Investment, on the other hand, is when she puts real energy, time, and thought into connecting with you. That's what should earn your attention in return. Psychologically, this is tied to reciprocity bias. People value what they work for, and they bond more deeply with those they've invested in. When you reward investment instead of interest, you flip the dynamic. She starts to see that your attention isn't a default. It's something to be earned. And when it's earned, it's valued. The key here is discernment. You have to be able to tell the difference between a woman who's curious about you and a woman who's committed to showing up for you. Interest is a compliment. Investment is a choice. The woman who makes that choice is telling you she's willing to meet you halfway. That's the woman you respond to with more of yourself. Philosophically, rewarding investment is about living in alignment with your values. If you claim to value your time and energy, but you hand them over to anyone who gives you a little validation, you're lying to yourself, and self-betrayal always shows. But when you protect your attention and give it only to those who have shown through action that they deserve it, you reinforce your self-worth in a way that others can feel. This is also how you avoid one-sided relationships. When you only respond to investment, you create a natural filter. The people who are just in it for the thrill of attention will disappear. The people who genuinely want to connect will stay, and they'll work harder to deepen the bond. This keeps the dynamic balanced. Here's what rewarding investment looks like in practice. She takes time out of her day to see you. You prioritize making it a great experience for both of you. She supports your goals. You include her in your victories. She's consistent with communication. You open up more over time. She makes an effort to understand you. You make an effort to let her in. Notice how none of this involves playing games or withholding affection for the sake of control. It's not about making her jump through hoops. It's about letting her know, through your actions, that your deeper attention is unlocked through effort, not just presence. And there's something else here. When you reward investment, you make your relationships more stable. Interest will always rise and fall. Emotions shift. But investment is action, and action is measurable. It's harder to fake, and it's easier to trust. You also give her something far more powerful than instant gratification. You give her the chance to earn you. And when someone earns something, they protect it. They fight for it. That's the chase you're looking for. Not a fleeting rush of attention, but the ongoing pursuit of someone who values what she's worked to build with you. From a bigger picture perspective, this is about building a life where your relationships are based on mutual contribution. You're not begging to be chosen, and you're not dangling yourself like a prize in front of anyone. You're living in a way that says, I'm already fulfilled, but if you add value to my life, I'll make space for you in it. That mindset is rare, and rare, as we've said, is always chased. By now, you can see how all the pieces connect. Self-respect ensures you don't settle for less. Purpose makes your life magnetic. Pacing builds anticipation. Mystery keeps her curious. High standards filter out the wrong people. And rewarding investment locks in the right ones. This is not just a strategy. It's a way of living that naturally draws the right woman toward you without you having to chase. So here's your final takeaway. Stop giving the best of you to people who have only given you the minimum. Stop confusing interest for commitment. Stop rewarding potential and start rewarding proof. Because the man who only rewards investment is the man who makes her work to keep what she's already fought to win.